Welcome to the podcast. Chris Graham here. We're talking with Pete Barlow. Pete is running for the Democratic nomination for the 6th District in Congress. And man, Pete, your campaign rolling out here in the last few weeks. Welcome to the show, first off, and maybe talk about what gets someone to decide, hey, after you worked in FEMA, the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, what makes you decide, okay, I got to get out there, I've got to try to run for Congress?
Yeah, that's a great question. I hear it a lot right now. Definitely my background being an emergency manager, I was got into emergency healthcare. I wanted to get into it that way, so I was in Peace Corps and went through nursing school, and then came into the Federal Emergency Management Agency. And I think through all that, I've come to recognize what a disaster looks like, and I really feel like right now the disaster we're all facing, that's coming for all Virginians, is the disaster on Capitol Hill, and the fact that this is just not representative of what I have come to believe are the interests of all of our constituents in this district. So that's really important to me. Secondly, just personally, um, I worry about future generations and what it's going to look like if we have no climate-informed science approach to government, or other issues that are just ballooning. And I don't think we have a good grip on a lot of things right now. So those are my big two.
You were in FEMA. You were working with FEMA still through this. You're part of this year, obviously. That's an agency that, among many, under attack by the Trump administration here in its second term. What did you see from inside as to? I mean, President Trump has pledged to try to get rid of FEMA. I mean, what was the feeling like on the inside there?
No, it was bad. I mean, I think everybody feels some level of hostility and trauma coming from the cabinet level DHS all the way up to the president. Kristi Noem has been pretty derogatory when talking about the agency, and we don't have leadership who actually has emergency management specific experience. He's well versed in weapons of mass destruction, but I don't know how that helps you recover after a hurricane. So,
Yeah.
Administrator Richardson, I don't know what's going on there, but yeah, 10 months ago, I was anticipating retiring from this agency that I've come to love. The colleagues and everybody, I miss them every day. I've got a lot of colleagues right now who are on furlough, and they're wondering if they're going to get paid. We've got 150,000 federal employees in the 6th congressional district that are not being heard by this congressional member. So yeah, for the last 10 months, that's what was going on. On day one of this administration, there were common sense policies and regulations that me and my team had written over the last 6 or 7 years that were summarily just torched and thrown out. We're talking about flood risk requirements for elevating structures after major disasters, so we don't lose that taxpayer money again and that infrastructure. Mitigating for natural disasters, building in seismic retrofits, incentivizing these things so that people can actually plan for future disasters, defensible space around structures that have been burned, so that, if you get that inevitable fire coming through again, it's much less likely to be devastating and to take out life and limb, and incur additional taxpayer losses there. So it was just basic, this was not waste or fraud, what you're hearing in the news. This is just common sense public service. And I can say that about 90% of the people that I know at FEMA, that like their job was just getting stuff done. So
Going from that level of specificity to the Trump administration, the top officials there saying, we just want to get rid of FEMA, and then on the other side of that, I mean, I know that we've dealt with this in Virginia. Some of our neighbors dealt with this from the out falling from Hurricane Helene last year. Just okay, we're gonna either give you grants or not give you grants on a whim, probably on a political whim,
Right.
based on how your state votes for governor and things like that. It's just fascinating to see the vindictiveness of the top folks there.
That's exactly right. And that being a precedent that they're setting, you wonder they're talking about doling out 25 billion of that $50 billion rural healthcare safety net that they've created based upon grants and the administration's discretion. So it really makes you wonder which states are going to get uh, some of those rural healthcare funds if this is how they do business,
Virginia's
really.
about to go blue here in a few weeks, so we're going to be on the wrong side of that,
Hey,
maybe.
fingers crossed. Let's hope so.
That's right. That's right. Hey, with your experience, since we're in day 17 of the shutdown, I wanted to get your thoughts and your experience as someone who worked in the federal government for a few
Yeah.
years. What is it like for the folks right now who are on day 17 of their shutdown? A lot of folks are either furloughed, as you mentioned. Some folks are working, just not, maybe won't get paid. What does that do for folks like when you were on the front lines there? I mean, you're either not working and you're not able to do what needs to be done, then you got to come back and make up for all of this time, or you're still working and not sure you're going to get paid. What does that do for morale inside?
Yeah, that's a great point. Yeah, I worked through the 2014 Ted Cruz charade that caused the shutdown. I lived through the 2018, of course, in the first Trump term, and both of those times, there wasn't a question about whether or not we were going to get paid ultimately. It was just when. Um, So the fact that Trump put that law into motion, and now he's the one who's violating it by saying, "Yeah, we might not pay these people back. Let's riff them all." He just does not understand how complex systems work. At least that's the impression I'm getting because there are efficiencies to be gained by reworking complex systems within the government. If somebody would have come in day one and just asked, they could have interviewed people who are there, who've been there for years, and can give them some ideas about where to take a scalpel and actually make the government work better. But they didn't. They just came in and thought that they knew better and are now torching complex systems that they don't understand just for personal gain, I think. So yeah, the uncertainty that's going on throughout the federal workforce is I took an organizational analysis course back in public policy graduate school at one point, and they were talking about the effects of turbulence in a complex workforce and what that means for productivity and what that means for just the end result. And it's just unnecessary. We're shooting ourselves in the foot. We all know that there are hurricanes and tornadoes and wildfires that are going to be barreling towards us. And to be performative in this way and shooting ourselves in the foot when we don't need to during blue skies, this is just dumb. Yeah.
Yeah, we've been fortunate that this year, at least since obviously the wildfires earlier this year, we've not had a hurricane season that's been, as destructive as we've seen the last few years. We're just lucky this hasn't gone worse than it has.
Yeah.
Um, let's take a step back. Your family background, you have several generations of Page County. I mean, so local, obviously very local here in the sixth district. You live in Augusta County on a farm. So maybe talk about yourself in that respect. Just this sixth district stretches from the Winchester area down to the Roanoke Salem area. It's a lot of agriculture, a lot of not a lot of cities, not a lot of urban living. Um, your familiarity could be very helpful in that respect, in what can be a tough district for Democrats. Talk about your background in that respect and how it maybe can help you out as you're running for this seat.
Yeah, that's a great point. My mom's family has 10 generations in the Augusta, Rockingham area, and then my dad's family was 10 generations in the Page County, and then further down south out of the district. And so that's really important to me. I think that having a local background that's steeped in the culture And I come from a faith background in this area, and I think that's so important to understand the faith component of our different cultures throughout the region. Like you say, District 6 is Winchester to Roanoke and everything in between, all the way over to the West Virginia line. And in that, we don't have there's no singular culture. We've got the Blue Ridge Mountains up in Warren and Frederick, all the way down to Shenandoah Valley, the Allegheny Highlands, the Roanoke River Valley. Like there are distinct Appalachian and some suburban groups out here that really need to all be taken into account. That's one of the things I don't think Ben Klein right now is even taking into account different constituency groups throughout I really think that he's just looking at his base and a small part of that base. He's not even thinking about the entire Republican base that really stands to lose a lot right now. You're talking about farmers, like you're saying, ag, the affordability crisis, the grain producers in this region who are going to lose out because of retaliatory tariffs from from nations like China. That is critical. And the fact that we're bailing out Argentina right now and at the same time losing $1.5 billion dollar grain market just in soybeans in Virginia. I've got friends who have 55 and 60 acres of soybean and they put it in thinking that they were going to have a market. Right now, that's up in the air, and it doesn't look like we have enough trading partners to fill the $1.5 billion void that's just one grain. We're talking about corn and everything else that's really taken slashes this year. So, yeah, it's a lot of complexity. I also think just infrastructure in the district is incredibly important. When our main thoroughfare, I-81, 70%, over 70% of fatalities on 81 are due to truck car interactions. We really need to make sure that truckers have more pull-off areas to overnight, but we also need to put money into a third lane so that we have less fatalities. Everybody knows how frustrating it is to sit in traffic on 81 on a Friday afternoon when you just want to get home. And we could avoid that if we had real representation here. Ben Klein has voted every time he's gotten a chance for for a full vote. He's voted against funding for 81.
I think I
So
see something on his Facebook page. He's clipped to the top of his Facebook page about $17 million for 81 or something like that. And it's like $17 million would pay for like a mile. I mean, what are we
well,
talking
yeah,
about?
it, yeah, and I should mention, the $17 he voted for that in committee, so it's not even come out yet. But that's the one vote that he has put towards funding for 81. But like you say, we're talking about a couple $100 million that he's not gone after, that we really need to have a systematic change of that infrastructure, and it'd help everybody out. We're not talking about Democrats or Republicans, just everybody needs that. So
And he's a reliable vote for the Trump rubber stamp. In particular, I mean, here we are, in our neck of the woods, Augusta County, after the big beautiful bill, as they called it, was passed and signed on July 4th. We wrote about on Augusta Free Press how Augusta Health was probably going to be negatively affected. Augusta Health isn't even a rural hospital. You mentioned there are urban parts. I live in the city of Waynesboro. Augusta County's population is the bulk of it is within Stanton, Waynesboro. The semi-urban communities that they're in. 125,000 people live in this region, and so our not rural hospital at all has had to close some community health centers because of the impact of this big beautiful bill. And
that is a great
obviously
point.
there are going to be hospitals that are more far flung, that are going, more very rural hospitals that are going to be impacted by this negatively. And yet, so it's not just Democrats in Congress are fighting right now to preserve the ability for people to be able to continue to have access to health care,
You're exactly
including
right.
Republican voters who don't vote for them. And that's
That's
I
right.
think that's a key here to point out.
I think that's so important. And we are trying to look out for healthcare, which is not a blue or red issue. This is just common sense. And 50%, over 50% of bankruptcies in the US are healthcare debt related.
Mm.
Now, bankruptcies across the United States after the ACA was implemented went way down. And what we're going to see is a reversal of that trend if these subsidies are not continued to go forward. So that's just one thing, but just to think about the fact that premiums, I was at a Valley Health Forum the other night in Page County, put on by the Rec Center, and it was incredible. Kudos to those folks. And what the CFO of Valley Health was saying was that we're going to see, in a lot of cases, 500% increases in premiums. That's crazy for a family of four on a fixed income. That's not something that they're going to have enough of a delta to deal with. And it's all going to come out of food or something else for kids, whatever. But, and then the Medicaid losses, we're looking at 31,000 people throughout the sixth congressional district who are going to lose their Medicaid. We're not talking about, or are not going to be eligible once they place these additional work requirements on them. So we should be clear about they're not going to lose something. They're just going to not, it's not going to be within their reach if they can't fill out all that paperwork that honestly, county departments of social services and stuff like this, they're not going to have enough staff to process all the paperwork, documenting and validating that people are eligible given these new work requirements. It's just untenable. And they're building, these people talk about the waste, fraud, and abuse of the bureaucracy. Well, they're building in more waste, fraud, and abuse by adding requirements for people to do this stuff. Like somebody's got to do all the paperwork for that. Who's going to do that?
Yeah,
So,
and it's putting the burden on states and localities is what it's
holy
doing.
cow. You're
And
exactly right.
and with making so either way we pay the bills.
Right,
We pay the federal taxes, we pay the state taxes. Um, you've been campaigning for a couple of months now. You rolled your campaign out in
right.
August. What are you hearing from folks as you're out and about?
Gosh, that's a great question. We've been having a lot of house parties and just talking to folks, Democrats, Republicans, anybody who will come out. And we have heard a lot of anxiety coming from folks about, what is the truth about immigration and what people are, our immigrant populations like. A lot of people want to talk about like, are all immigrants getting Medicaid? And is that something to be afraid of? A lot of people are worried. There's a lot of anxiety about data centers and AI and what that's going to mean both for our workforce, but also for, we don't have a complex regulatory system to deal with those data centers right now. So without that kind of system set up of regulatory and zoning framework, we're going to have people moving in here before we are actually prepared for the changes that that's going to cause. It's going to be a sink on our electric grid, but it's also going to be a boon for some local economies as far as tax dollars. And what are we going to spend that money on? But also, are we going to allow that in, and where are we going to allow it so that it's not taking up prime farmland? Farmers aren't looking to to just develop all the prime land, and that's something that's really at risk right now.
Yeah, once farmland is developed, it's never going to be farmland
That's the
again.
last crop, right? Yeah,
It's the last crop. That's right. In this district, Ben Klein, I mentioned Ben Klein, a rubber stamp for Donald Trump. In a lot of ways, voters seem to rubber stamp Republicans. So, you got to reach out to Democratic voters. You got to reach out to swing voters and Republican voters. What's your strategy for that? Because we got to flip things here. How do you do that?
that's exactly right. I've been telling people I'm an independent Dem. We have to be able to, we have a two-party system, so there's not much wiggle room right there, and I'm not going to challenge Ben on his own turf. The idea is that we need to competently talk about rural issues, about hunting access, river preservation, land preservation, but also about the tariffs and how the farm bill is going to trickle down to folks around here, how we're going to make sure that we have incentives for people to do BMPs and protect our local waterways, but also make a good have a good crop and be able to have a market for that crop. I've got dairy farmer friends who are concerned about large dairies and the liquid market being undermined right now by a lot of these big conglomerates, and that's a complex issue that I'm trying to learn more about. The poultry industry around here has been the bedrock of a bedrock of our local economy for 100 years now. And we need to make sure that we both sustain that economy, but also, we have a federation of different types of poultry farmers. We've got organic farmers around here, but also cooperatives and stuff. And we need to make sure that we maintain that diversification so the farmers have choices when they're growing poultry. And for Democrats to be able to talk about this stuff, we have to be able to open up our tent again. We always talk about being a big tent party. Well, let's really be a big tent party and talk to people who we disagree with. I'm encouraging people at these local parties when we meet and greet. I'm saying, please, if you don't do anything else, we do need money. We do need people to share our social media messages so that we get information out there about the local food map of the valley that the rural Dems put together. I mean, that's critical, showing people where food pantries are. But I say, if you can't even do any of that stuff, just pick that one neighbor that you know you're going to have a complex conversation with and take a tea over to them and try to sit down because we have to re-knit our social fabric because right now we've got a guy up there who really makes money every time we disagree on something, and we have to be able to pull back together. So that's one of those things. It's just, but then also pragmatically, we're going out to every part of the district. We're going to be talking to people that Dems haven't been very effective at talking to before. We're going to be talking about hunting access. My background in the Fish and Wildlife Service, I think, is critical for that, and talking about hunter recruitment, retention, and these local traditions, but also, the fact that I want to talk about these complex systems. That's what I was working on in DC, and I want to talk about how do we're going to have somebody who rebuilds these systems or who can help rebuild these systems after they're back on the hill. So we need to talk about what's that going to look like. We're going to have to rebuild some of these agencies that have just been gutted, and like the disability services within the Department of Education. That's critical. I've got friends who have children who are benefiting from the research and the grants that they provided over the years, and for that to be gone is just egregious. It's cruel and unnecessary. So we're going to try to talk about those things in competent ways. But
This is a big district to be doing all that stuff in, a couple hundred miles almost from one
holy
end to the
cow,
other, and lots in between, and lots of back roads.
I get
I'm
tired
sure
just thinking about it. You're right.
I'm sure you've already put a lot of miles on the car, and you're going to be doing a lot more between now and next year. So, well, ladies and gentlemen, that's been Pete Barlow, pete-barlow.com, and Pete, we look forward to having you back on. This has been great.
Chris, thank you so much. Take care.